let's just jump right in. Today, we're diving into an incredibly cinematic and historically inspired narrative from our source material, the epic story of Prophet Nuh. And listen, this isn't just a story about a massive flood, right? It's literally a masterclass in human psychology, absolute dedication, and what happens when a singular truth clashes head-on with popular culture. So let's walk through exactly how this ancient history is framed in this explainer. I really want you to keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through this. How do you hold on to faith when the entire world is laughing at you? Seriously, imagine waking up every single day knowing exactly what you need to do, but facing a society that genuinely thinks you've completely lost your mind. How on earth do you maintain that conviction? Well, we're going to see exactly how that immense psychological and spiritual weight was carried. Section 1. The Age of Idols and an Ancient Settlement Transformed. So, our story begins in an ancient Middle Eastern settlement. And things didn't just change overnight. It was this slow, super subtle shift in the culture. People gradually shifted their entire focus to these massive stone idols, placing them right in the middle of public squares. They became the absolute center of public life. And while all this was happening, the core message of one God, it was just actively, deliberately ignored by the masses. Moving on to Section 2, Centuries of Patient Preaching and the Long Test of Faith. Now, it's fascinating how the source material represents Prophet Nuh respectfully, often just through a silhouette or symbolic framing. It keeps our focus entirely on his unwavering message. And wow, talk about endurance. We aren't just talking about a few tough weeks here. We're talking about literally lifetimes. Think about it. Spring turning to summer, decades stretching into actual centuries. He's out there planting seeds of truth with his unimaginable patience. But the vast, vast majority of society, they just met him with the cold, harsh winter of a completely deaf society.
Which brings us to Section 3, Constructing the Massive Ark, a vessel built far from the sea.
Eventually, divine guidance inspired what must have seemed like a total logistical absurdity, building this colossal wooden ark completely inland, miles and miles away from any ocean. The contrast here is just incredibly cinematic. On one side, you have the believers, hyper-focused, cutting timber and shaping these massive wooden beams under dramatic skies. And on the other side, the arrogant crowds just gathering around to point, laugh, and hurl insults. It's this powerful, stark juxtaposition of focused purpose versus, idle arrogance. All right, Section 4, the world-changing flood and the gathering storm. So the massive ark is finally finished, and the time for warnings has totally passed. There's this methodical, genuinely terrifying progression that happens next. It starts kind of how you'd expect, right? Dark storm clouds gathering, heavy rain starting to fall. But then the sheer epic scale of this event hits you. Water literally bursts upward from the earth itself. We're talking about a complete inundation from above and below, finally culminating in these enormous waves that just swallow the land entirely. But get this, despite the terrifying intensity of the storm outside, the boarding process was astonishingly calm. Just try to picture the sheer scale of it. Pairs of incredible creatures, elephants, horses, lions, birds, camels, all entering this colossal wooden structure in complete, orderly harmony. And they're doing this alongside the humble believers, right at the exact moment the world begins to vanish underwater. Wild, right? Now, right at the height of all this catastrophe, we had a truly heartbreaking question. What happens when family ties clash with divine reality? See, one of Noah's sons actually refuses to board. He relies on his own logic, figuring he can just climb a mountain to escape. And despite these desperate pleading calls from his father, he is respectfully, but tragically, overwhelmed by the waters. It's such a profound, heavy moment where human stubbornness meets an absolutely unstoppable reality. The contrast detailed in our source material here is just unbelievable. Outside, you've got this violent, cinematic level of destruction going on. Towering waves, skies just ripped apart by lightning, entire villages disappearing, mountains completely surrounded. But inside that wooden hall, total, absolute peace. The believers are praying, and these diverse groups of wild animals remain perfectly calm, completely safe as the ark just rides out the storm. Which leads us to our final chapter, Section 5, A Renewed Earth, as the waters finally recede. After enduring that terrifying, seemingly endless storm, the rain finally stops. the ark comes to rest securely upon a mountain, and the believers step out into this beautifully renewed, lush green landscape. I mean, imagine that sensory shift. You go from a dark, echoing wooden hull surrounded by roaring storms straight into crisp, vibrant sunlight bursting with rivers and fresh life. The whole world has literally been washed clean, and those majestic animals spread out in every direction to start over. As a hopeful sunrise symbolizes this brand new chapter for humanity, there are 4 key words that perfectly encapsulate what we should all take away from this explainer today: mercy, patience, faith, and perseverance. The profound mercy of the divine, the staggering patience of a man preaching over centuries, the unwavering faith of that small group, and, of course, the immense perseverance it took to build a massive ship inland while the whole world laughed at them. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to reflect on. Just as that ark was built plank by plank through ridiculous amounts of doubt and ridicule, our own long-term convictions build the vessels that carry us through our personal storms, you know? So when the floods of your life eventually recede, what kind of new world will your patience have built? Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.